I was 16 years old in 1990, a high school sophomore who didn't have a normal job like most of my friends. They worked at fast food places, malls, or grocery stores, but I was good with my hands and did different kinds of work. I did construction, flooring, and auto mechanics. I worked under the table, but I didn't mind because I only worked when I was needed, and I could work evenings and weekends. One of the guys I worked for was a contractor who did remodeling projects for businesses. He would call me to help him with tearing down walls, floors, ceilings. Sometimes he would leave me alone at a site with a list of things to do, while he and his crew did the new installation or renovation. I was the youngest and the least skilled, but I earned their respect because I worked hard and didn't complain. I also earned good money, more than my friends made in a week. One day he called me and asked me if I could work on Saturday. I said yes, of course. He told me to bring food and drinks because there was nothing around the place we were going. I packed a small cooler with sodas, snacks, and sandwiches. I could eat a lot and not gain weight. I was always hungry. He picked me up on Saturday morning because I didn't have a car. He drove me to the site, but I didn't pay attention to where we were going. I was too busy talking to him about cars. That was my dream, to buy an old muscle car and fix it up. He seemed interested, but maybe he was just being nice. We drove for a long time until we reached a remote area in the desert. It was dry, dusty, and desolate. There were huge plots of land with houses far apart from each other. We left the highway and took some smaller roads until we arrived at the property. He was in a rush to drop off the tools and leave. He gave me a breaker bar and a small tool bag. He also gave me a jug of water that looked old and dirty. He said the water and the electricity were off at the house. He said he would be back to pick me up at 6 p.m. and that I should be done by then. He always said that, but I knew he meant it. He didn't pay me for overtime. He drove away, leaving me alone at the house. The house was a big, old wooden house that looked like it had been abandoned for years. It had broken windows, peeling paint, and a sagging roof. It looked haunted. I felt scared, but I ignored it. I had a job to do, and I wasn't afraid of anything. So I thought. He left me alone at the house, in the middle of nowhere. I went inside and saw that it was almost empty. My job was to clear out everything that was left and demolish the floors, walls, and ceilings. They wanted to make this place look new and sell it for a profit. But as soon as I stepped in, I felt a cold shiver. The house was creepy. It was like going back in time to a different era. The carpet was a dark green, the wood was a dark brown, and the curtains were old and faded. The kitchen had a green sink, stove, and oven, and the closet had a bunch of old stuffed animals. The house looked like a Western ranch, with wagon wheels everywhere. I had a radio with me, but it only played a few stations. I turned it on for some noise and started to work. I threw out all the junk, ripped up the carpet, smashed the kitchen, and pulled off the wood panels. It was easy work, and I enjoyed it. I used the water jug that my boss gave me to wash up now and then. But by the afternoon, I was thirsty and hungry. I had finished all my food and drinks. I hoped that he would come back soon to pick me up. I was done with my work, and I swept the place clean. It looked ready for the next crew to come and fix it up. But the sun was setting, and the temperature was dropping. I only had a flannel shirt, and it wasn't enough. It was getting dark, and I was getting scared. There were no cell phones back then, and there was no power, water, or phone line at the house. I climbed up to the roof and looked around. I saw a small road and a few houses, but they were all dark. I thought about walking to one of them and asking for help, but the nearest house looked empty. I thought that the many people had lost their homes. Maybe this whole area was abandoned. Maybe I was the only living person here. I wondered what I should do. I should stay at the house until morning and then try to find someone. I didn't know what to do, but then I heard something. A loud noise. It sounded like a roar of big wild animal. It came from behind the house. It sounded angry. It sounded hungry. It sounded like it was coming closer. I froze. I panicked. I wished I had never come here. I realized that I was alone. and nobody knew where I was. Only my boss knew, but I didn't know if he told anyone else. My family wouldn't worry about me until Sunday night, because they knew I worked a lot to save money for my car. They didn't even know I was here. It was dark, but the sky was full of stars and the moon was bright. I wished I had a flashlight or a way to make a fire. I tried to make a small fire with some wood and paper, but it didn't work. It was cold, and I was shivering. It felt like it was below 30 degrees. I decided to go back inside the house, but it was even creepier than before. It was empty and silent, except for the wind and the noises outside. I had a radio, but the batteries were dying. It was my only source of light and sound. I took an old chair and sat in the living room, facing the door. I heard strange noises, like animals, leaves, and footsteps. I tried to start a fire in the fireplace, but I couldn't. I was just trying to keep my mind off my situation. The house was dark, darker than it should be. Even with the moonlight, I couldn't see anything. My mind started to play tricks on me. I saw shadows moving in and out of the house. I heard whispers and voices. I got up from my chair and yelled, "Hello!" But then I heard something fall on the other side of the house. I ran to the door and went outside again. I could see better in the moonlight, but I still couldn't tell what was making the noises and the movements. I ran to the edge of the house where I had left my tools. I grabbed Big Daddy, my heavy pry bar. I was ready to fight whatever was out there. I had to keep moving because I was freezing. My shirt and flannel weren't enough. The wind was blowing harder, and I couldn't see any lights around me. I didn't want to climb on the roof again because I might fall in the dark, but I climbed on the gate to see if I could see any houses or cars nearby. I remembered the stories I had heard about this place, how people would come here and bury bodies, how there were satanic cults here, how people would disappear here. Every noise scared me. Every shadow made my heart race. I knew the house was empty, but I swear I heard noises inside. I curled up on the porch, looking at the living room window. I expected to see someone there any moment. It was 11 p.m. and I looked at my watch. It was going to be a long night. Everything had happened since it got dark. I didn't know how I would survive another 6 hours until sunrise. I thought about leaving as soon as it got light. I thought about taking the little water I had left and walking east. I knew that if I walked east, I would find a road that would lead me to safety. But then I heard a car coming down the dirt road. I was relieved. I thought maybe they could help me. I turned to look at the road, hoping to see a friendly face. But then I saw the car. It was a black car with tinted windows. It was driving fast and it didn't stop. It drove past me, and then it turned around. It came back and stopped in front of the house. The engine was running, but nobody got out. I was confused. I was scared. I wondered who they were and what they wanted. I wondered if they had anything to do with the noises and the shadows. I wondered if they were here to help me or to hurt me. I saw a shadow of a person moving from the kitchen to the hall. I jumped up from my chair and screamed. That was not an animal. That was a human. I started to back away from the porch, towards the pile of tools, but I tripped over some debris and fell to the ground. I tried to get up, but I fell again. It felt like something was pushing me down, or maybe it was my imagination. But then I saw bright lights coming towards me. I was lying on the ground, and the lights were blinding me. I got up and saw that it was a car. It was my boss's car. He got out and looked at me with a puzzled expression. "What are you doing?" he asked. I was so relieved to see him. I wasn't angry. I just asked him what happened. He said he was sorry, but he made a mistake. He thought the other crew was supposed to pick me up, and they thought he was. So nobody came for me. He said he only realized it later when he talked to the other crew leader. He said it took him almost 2 hours to drive here from the other site. He said he felt really bad and he would pay me extra for the time I spent here. He also gave me a can of Coke from his cooler and asked me if I was thirsty. I drank it all. Once we got back to the city, he took me to a fast food place and I ate like I never ate before. As he was driving me home, I asked him about the house. I told him how creepy it was. He said he didn't know anything about it. He only knew what we had to do. He said he didn't care about the history of the house. He only cared about the money he would make from selling it. After that, I made sure to always bring extra batteries, a flashlight, and more water. I never wanted to be stranded in the desert again. I never wanted to see that house again. I loved graffiti art. I used to spray my designs all over the city. There was a canal in the east side where the walls were covered with colorful graffiti. It was a hidden spot, but some people could see it from above. My friend and I found a secret ladder in an abandoned parking lot that led us to the canal. We went down and walked along the water, painting over the old and faded graffiti with our own fresh and creative tags. We had a blast, but then we saw him. A man standing on the other side of the canal, staring at us. We panicked, stuffing our cans into my backpack and getting ready to bolt. We thought he was going to bust us, but the man didn't move. He just stared at us with a blank expression. It was creepy. He looked about 40, with gray hair, but his posture was unnatural. His legs and arms were spread out, as if he was frozen in place. He didn't blink or breathe. I exchanged a scared glance with my friend, Jom. He yelled at the man, "Hey, you okay, man?" I thought it was a bad idea, but I hoped he would snap out of it. Nothing. He was like a statue. We decided to ignore him and keep walking and painting. An hour later, we were almost done. We had only 2 cans left. I stepped back to admire our work. That's when I saw him again. He was standing in the middle of the murky water, still staring at us. I dropped my can in shock and looked at Jom. He saw him too. The man took a step towards us, the first one we had ever seen him take, then another, and another. He was coming for us. We threw our cans and ran for the ladder. We didn't stop until we reached the city center. We were out of breath and terrified. We couldn't believe what had just happened.